because you've been involved with a lot of good films. I went through some of the films that you've done. So what is it about this film that really makes you think that it is the best one you've done so far, that you've been involved with?
I don't know if I necessarily think it's the best movie I've been involved with so far. I mean, I think a combination. I mean, all the movies that I've done, I'm proud of for different reasons in different ways. Black Coach Daughter is a magnificent piece of work, in my opinion. I thought The Monster was extraordinary and whatever, but I will stop shooting my own horn. I think honestly, Dark and the Wicked right now, I think it's timing. I think there's something about COVID and separation and sort of the highlight of being separated from your parents or your loved ones and your family, and that exposing a lot of different experiences that people have in terms of what those relationships are like and how strong are they, and it's just putting a spotlight on this particular kind of relationship, and I think that this movie, because it explores that a bit, obviously not from a pandemic standpoint. I mean, the movie was written starred earlier, before any of this happened, but I do think that that's touching a nerve. I think people are sort of feeling a little bit of that despair, and and I hate to say it, but I mean, maybe misery loves company, but I think that there's an element of it's just timing. I think that's what's really, really hitting people and why people are really into it. Also, I mean, pound for pound, a lot of scares in this movie. And we can't argue. I think Marin Ireland and Michael Abbott Jr. give stellar performances. I mean, they know how to kind of populate silence. And, Brian is not the wordiest of filmmakers. And so it's always been important for us to cast actors who know how to kind of communicate a lot in silence, and both of them really do. So I think that's been, really, riding on their backs along on this path.
I have no problem with dark endings. And obviously this movie, when you have the title, just the title alone, The Dark and the Wicked, you really can't go down a nice path with that name. But I have absolutely no problem with dark endings, and I'm very happy that this kind of stuck to it and nailed it. I mean, I know it's tough that we're going through, like you said, tough times now, but that's kind of part of what horror is sometimes you got to have an unhappy ending.
I agree. I mean, life doesn't always end happily, and I think that if you can speak authentically to that, audience will go there with you. And sometimes you got to be in the right headspace to go down that road. And that's where I think timing is helping us now, but I think a lot of us are in that right headspace.
Unfortunately, but yeah. So let's kind of take it back to the beginning and kind of how did this film come to life?
So, Brian and I were partners for 10 years, and so, we've been looking and doing new stuff, and Brian was on the film with Sonny Molly, who was one of my producing partners on this movie, and was actually one of the original partners on producers on The Strangers. And Brian and Sonny had been friends over the years, and I knew him tangentially at that point. But Sonny had gone off and made a movie himself, because he's also a writer director. Originally called Hurt, and has now been Blumhouse bought it, and the title's been changed, I believe, to Inspired by True Events. But he had a very particular production plan in mind of going to make that movie, and it turned out amazing. It was beautiful. I really loved the movie. I saw a recut of it recently, and I was like, this is just amazing. But anyway, Brian got inspired and said, why don't we, meaning Unbroken and my company at the time, why don't we put our spin on that? Why don't we take Sonny's model and do our own version of it? And so we asked Sonny to come and help and work with us on it. And so Brian was like, all right, I got to write a script that is organic to this model. You know what I mean? That actually isn't just, I'm going to take something off the shelf and make it for less money in a different way. I'm actually going to do something that, with this kind of baked in. And so we shot the movie on his family farm, and the house that's in the film is actually the house that Brian stays at when he goes to visit his family, and often he goes there also to write. So he was there and, coming up and wanting to write this script. So he wrote the script in the location we eventually shot it at. And so, it really it came from that. And he wanted to, Brian likes personal stories. And so, the rest is just kind of history. And then that kind of got barked out of his creative brain. And it was really good. I really liked that dynamic of, an older and a brother and a sister having to deal with the death of their parents, or, the death of their father, the pending death of their father. That felt like a really relatable entry point to all of us, frankly, for better or for worse.
So just real quick, that the setting was kind of born out of him ending up writing there, or was that kind of always the plan to shoot it there?
Well, when we were talking about, okay, we want to make a movie with this particular plan, he thought, well, this location makes sense. I'm here, I know it. Goats are creepy as fuck, and, I'm in the middle of nowhere in Texas. And so and he also wanted to make a movie about the South. Brian is Southern, and so he was like, I'd like to write something that kind of speaks to me personally on a lot of different levels. So the location was, he wrote the script and then talked to his family and said, I'm writing the script that is based around this property. If we make it, can we make it here? And they graciously said yes. So they were kind of hand in hand.
Okay, that's cool. I just wanted to know, because I think that the farm definitely plays a big role in making it an effective movie. I mean, obviously a lot of things do, but like you said, the goats are creepy. Just the whole place was kind of creepy.
Yeah, I mean, it's so beautiful, but at the same time, you are out in the middle of nowhere on a farm, and depending on the right light, that can be gorgeous or terrifying.
Absolutely. So you've worked a long time with Brian. So what is it about him and his films that you like working, that makes you want to continue to work with him?
Well, this was our last movie together, but after 10 years, I think that, we really, we kind of, we started with the idea that we wanted to sort of bring a level of seriousness and a level of beauty, frankly, back to kind of genre of film. And, the 70s was kind of the heyday for these incredibly well-performed, incredibly beautiful movies, whether it's The Exorcist or The Shining or Jaws or Rosemary's Baby. And, there haven't really been a lot of movies being made like that. And so when he made The Strangers, the other thing about that movie that I was incredibly impressed by, that was certainly on the page, but when he got behind the camera and really managed to sort of figure this out, he's a very patient filmmaker. And I think that patience kind of translates into tension. And that sort of notion got a little bit lost. We were sort of in the era of quick cuts and big sound and, a lot of frenetic pacing. And, he just sort of wanted to slow it all down. And I think that by slowing a lot of that stuff down, you create space for tension to grow. James Wan did it with Insidious. Like, he's also a patient filmmaker. And I think that in horror, it's the stuff that I like and that I respond to and like to work on are all a little bit patient. You know what I mean? Because what you don't see and what you're imagining is always scarier than what's kind of popping out at you. So the trick is to find the right balance. And that's what I was always impressed by with Brian as a filmmaker. And he's an extraordinary screenwriter. I mean, I love his work. I love the way he writes. And he and I, always sort of shared a respect and a similar taste. We were in a similar taste. That's kind of what kept us, that's what bonded us and gave force to the work that we did.
You bring up The Strangers, and obviously another one of my favorite movies. When I look at this film, I see a lot of The Strangers in it, very similarities. How do you view this film versus The Strangers from your perspective?
They're really different. I mean, I think they're different, but obviously you can look and you can see similar, visual, I've always liked Brian's visual palette, he's not a blue-green guy, really. It's a lot warmer. I mean, my job, both as a writer and as a director, is to kind of take the safe and make it feel unsafe. Take the familiar and make it feel unfamiliar. And so, with the warmth of homes and things like that, those are the places that you want to feel cozy and safe in. And if we can fuck that up, if we can turn that on its head, then we've succeeded. And so that I think is that was really kind of what The Strangers, the kind of cornerstone of that movie was really about. I mean, I think Dark and the Wicked, even though visually they kind of have the same vibe, I think thematically are the similarities is Brian likes to take a inherently dramatic and tense and usually awful situation and then add a little extra, right? So if you think about the setup of The Strangers, it was about a couple who'd gone off on this romantic weekend and then she breaks up with him while they're stuck at this house. That's the setup. So, you may not remember that, but that was the lean-in drama of that movie, and then something, that little extra comes in with the knock on the door. Dark and the Wicked sort of is the same. You've got two adult siblings coming home to help, basically with their dying father, and then you throw in a little extra. But the original setup is actually very compelling on its own. So that's what I really like about the story that you tell. And I think that is a similar construction between the two movies.
I completely agree, and I like the extra. I think that's what kind of makes it different than anything else. But as far as the last question, I guess I'll give you a chance to finally promote this movie and basically what can fans really expect from this and why should they watch this film?
I think this movie will get under your skin. I think it's, it sort of forces us to look into whether, the future or the past, depending on your own experience, in dealing with an inevitability, the death of our parents, and how that will reveal, relationships. And I think that God is a place of incredible vulnerability. And so if you can introduce something absolutely terrifying into that moment of deep vulnerability, that's going to stick with you for a long time. And so my hope is that fans will go to this movie and, ask some tough questions of themselves, but also get scared shitless. I mean, there's a lot of great scares in this film. And, Julie Oliver Pusto, who plays the role of the mother, is amazing. There's some amazing shit with her. So, it's got good sound, and it's scary. Like, I'm not going to say you're going to have a great, fun time, because it's not a movie it is, but at the same time, you're definitely going to be affected, and you're definitely going to be frightened. And I think that, as a horror fan, that's kind of what you hope to get out of a good horror movie.
Yes, well, as a horror fan who watched the movie, I watched it 3 times, and I got a lot of that out of it. It will definitely scare you, and it definitely leave an impression on you. So you're absolutely right about that.
Well, thank you.